With Specially Changed Christie now released, now would probably be a great time to talk about the best specially changes that you can invest in, if they're worth it, what the pros and cons and the strengths of each character are. And of course, today I'm going to have a top 5, not any specific ordered top 5 list for the specially changes. Let's get into it. The first character that we have on our list is Angelic Montmorancy, and as you can see, she's got immunity, she's got the healing, she's got cleanse and dispel, she's even got a sleep, which is not very useful 99% of the time. However, given that you can get her very quickly through the connections, she is definitely a solid pickup and probably one of the most important specially changes to invest in, especially if you're going to be clearing content like Abyss, Hell Raid, and Nightmare Raid, and even Wyvern 13. Now within each of these content, Momo acts as kind of a pseudo tank and also a healer in addition to a cleanser. For Wyvern 13, she's able to tank a bunch of hits. She uses her skill 3 on herself, or she uses her skill 2 to heal up everyone else. In Nightmare Raid, she acts as another pseudo tank. However, this time around, especially if you're fighting the boss on the top right, I don't remember the exact name of it, but for that case, the boss will on occasion debuff you. Angelic Montmorancy is great for that because she has an AoE cleanse, and that deals with a lot of like the debuffs in addition to also healing and maintaining the overall health and integrity of your team. Now again, assuming that you are building Montmorancy on something like a triple HP set and she has well over 20,000 HP and 1500 defense, none of these pieces of content are really a struggle or really a challenge for Montmorancy, and ultimately a lot of this investment is just preparing you for when you are inevitably going to have to use Momo for the Abyss. I could list off countless fights where Montmorancy definitely works in the Abyss, but if you don't take my word for it, just look at all the statistics, I guess, between the challenge modes, the different floors. Like, people are bound to use the characters that you inevitably end up investing in for one piece of content and other, and of course Montmorancy is so versatile that you can actually use her in probably 99% of the content that you're looking at. Now, of course, her presence in Abyss is great because you need a lot of healing, there's a lot of debuffs, and of course, it's nice to have immunities. However, we haven't even talked about one of the best locations to use Montmorancy, which is the mid to late game-ish adventure stages where you can't just one-shot it with an AoE anymore, and you have to start fighting characters like Lilius, or you start fighting characters like Ilanov, and you either need a tank or you need 2 healers. Savior Adin is also really good. However, one of the things that you may find about Savior Adin is that unlocking her is pretty difficult. Now, I say difficult, however, casual plug, I did end up unlocking her in about 7 days, so you could probably do the same if you have nice friends or if you're really stupid and you play the game 24/7 like I do. But let's get into what exactly she does. She has an insane nuke on skill 3 that gives you invincibility and also defense penetrates by 50%. Her S2 gives her evasion, and she also ends up doing this AoE attack in response if you end up hitting her or if you don't, like, if you miss on her. And she ends up giving herself a CR push in addition to giving herself an attack buff after she has been hit and does the counter attack. If that wasn't enough, her S1 heals her, does a load of damage, and also applies unbuffable. Now, if you already know about Savior Adin, you'll know that she's extremely good against dark characters. However, what you might not have known is that actually a decent amount of people, maybe top 20 amount of people, do actually end up using Savior Adin for Asthmatic 13. She might not be the greatest AoE character, kind of like a Vildred or maybe like a Landy or something like that. However, in terms of being able to one-shot the eggs and also just being able to do a insane nuke to Asthmatic 13 with her skill 3, she definitely has a place in being one of the better characters that you can pick for Asthmatic 13. It increases the amount of damage that you do. In general, she is also pretty durable because she has the built-in evasion, and since she also provides herself an attack buff, you don't always have to rely on Tamarin. I think sometimes the cycling or the tuning of things can make it so that Tamarin's attack buff wears off or something along those lines, but in general, just having the nuke, the AoE, and the consistent S1 damage is usually more than enough to justify taking Adin to Asthmatic 13. I personally end up using something like Tamarin, Iceria, Mercedes instead, but if you don't find yourself needing Raz or another Soul Weaver or another utility character, consider picking Adin, especially if you've already cleared Zeo and you for some reason don't want to make an Asthmatic 13 one-shot. Now, while she's definitely usable or pretty good in Asthmatic 13, that isn't to really take away from the real PvE or the true use case where I end up seeing Savior Adin the most, which is ultimately in Nightmare Raid. There are plenty of times where I've seen people take Savior Adin just because she either does the nuke or has like the invincibility, or she's just a little bit harder to hit. And of course, since you do have the built-in lifesteal in S1, assuming that you're durable enough, some people will just run her on slow and destruction and be able to heal and just out-sustain all of the fights using Savior Adin. I also discovered that she's great at clearing adventure if you get her as a supporter friend. Especially when you were a poor streamer punching upward against Smilegate, trying to beat up all the adventure stages. There is great value in having a Savior Adin that's on lifesteal and decrescent so that she can counter heal, and also do a load of damage with her skill 3, give everyone invincibility, prevent the Tamarin or the Adventure Rods or the Iceria from getting one-shot. And all of this is without talking about where Savior Adin really shines, which is PvP. In Guild War, Arena, I'm sure you've seen fast Adins, slow Adins that are on Proof of Valor, Adins that are like the proper build that have like a load of versatility, can be used to one-shot any dark characters. They prevent you from trying to pick characters like Apoc Ravi without a little bit of 50-50ing. And I don't think I need to show you guys any number of showcases of her soloing your entire team, not getting hit 30 times in a row, but when she's on your team, she gets one shot because, I don't know, the wind blew in her eyes. But you get it. Savior Adin is really great. The next character on our list is Unbound Knight Arowell, and she's almost as insane as the last two characters, but it's primarily focused for PvP. Now, I'm sure if you play Arena, Guild War, or RTA at all, it is no surprise that this character also tops the list, and of course, it's for good reason. She has a full strip into stun on skill 3 that also gives barrier. She has built-in escort and gives barrier with like one of her specially changed runes to all light characters that are on her team. And just for good measure, she has a Dispel 2 individual buff S1, which is also really good, all things considered. Yeah, it's pretty clear why people are picking Arowell, especially earlier in RTA, or they like to pair her so frequently in Guild War or Arena with characters like Spectre Tenebria or ML Bologna. Essentially, if you need a character that needs protecting, not only does Arowell give Escort, which is way better than Aureus, she can also stun and strip characters off of their buffs, so in case if it's really difficult to hit someone because, I don't know, they have anti-crit, or I don't know, they have attack buff and they have defense buff and all stuff like this, just strip with S3 or S1 and then success. Now, like I mentioned, she is great for all kinds of PvP, but just to recount, especially in Guild War, she's great not just on defense in case if you on occasion want to mix things up and have a Holy Sack Arowell that revives after you try to one-shot someone on their team. She is likely one of the better knights that you can actually pick on offense as well, just because in case if someone does have anti-crit or does have attack buff, you can mitigate and also prevent the enemy opponent or AI from reacting very aggressively by just stunning it and giving it no more buffs. She also makes characters like Specimen Says work, which is incredible because making a character like Specimen Says work is ridiculous. That being said, that character sucks, so don't pick him. Now in Arena, where there's 4 characters as opposed to Guild Wars 3, this is a very common character to encounter just because, again, everyone loves the Holy Sack. You also want mitigation, and in case if you end up forgetting to one-shot or strip the Arowell's Escort, sometimes people will just run 30,000 HP characters and you have to deal with, and ultimately, despite not being the most insane PvE specific or PvE usable character in the entire world, what she lacks in the PvE department, I promise you, she makes up for in the PvP department. Okay, so the next character we have on our list is Shadow Knight Pyllis, and this is a character that has become a personal fan favorite, especially of mine. I know a lot of people don't like the whole, oh, she does damage, but it's only based off of Rocket Punch, not only because it's kind of cringe to get a plus 30 Rocket Punch, but also because Espa hasn't rerun yet. But in terms of theme and the reason why Pyllis is being picked right now, I think she's one of the funniest and most enjoyable characters ever. Now, the reason for that, of course, for me is petty, because I've been sick and tired of people that try to just slam counter characters, pray to some god that they may or may not believe in, that they don't get countered or that I get countered and then my entire team gets one shot. But to combat situations like that, Shadow Knight Pyllis is the hero that we definitely didn't deserve, but we definitely needed. If we backtrack just a little bit, let's talk about the prowess of her PvP kit. The first feature of her kit is that she has a cleanse on skill 3, which is a 1 debuff cleanse from all allies, and it also provokes and gives a barrier that you can soul burn so that it's very frequently up. This and the fact that it also scales with defense alongside her skill 1 that also scales with defense and also provokes is kind of the bread and butter and kind of just the way that you play Pyllis. You constantly provoke, you have Rocket Punch to deal a load of damage with defense, and you just kind of provoke and provoke. Cleanse Barrier, Cleanse Barrier, Provoke, Cleanse Barrier. That and the fact that she provides defense buff to all of her allies on skill 2 is pretty insane, but none of that even talks about the fact that she gets an insane amount of free stat when you're above, I believe, 75% health, which is kind of a lot for a 3-star knight. Anyways, her best cases right now are definitely in PvP, and of course she's going to be used against characters like Abyssal Yuffie, Navy Captain Landy. Any kind of compositions that have counters or dual attacks is definitely Shadow Knight Pyllis' specialty. And I completely forgot to say, but did I mention that she also has innate hit chance for some reason? So while other 3-stars are currently drowning in the ocean right now, Shadow Knight Pyllis is doing very great for herself, preventing characters like Adin from being super strong, preventing characters like Remnant Violet from ever seeing the light of day, which she definitely deserves. She's great for Guild War, she's great for Arena, and although she originally started in Guild War as an offensive strategy, I do have to address the elephant in the room, which is ultimately, even if you end up using her on Aureus, it's not going to feel the same unless if you have Rocket Punch. When you have a max Rocket Punch, this character goes from maybe like a B+ to A tier character to definitely like an A+, like low S character, just because of how impactful the damage is. But she's great. I'm sure you already knew this. Invest in her today, especially if you want to do well in Guild Wars. I was kind of coerced into building this character at first for Guild Wars. I'm sure you're going to be as well. And finally, it wouldn't be right to talk about the specially changed characters without talking about Adventurer Roz. Now, unlike characters like Pyllis or Arowell, where you're certainly worth investing in terms of specially changed, this is definitely a character that you will also gain value in, but instead of focusing so much on PvP, you're definitely getting a lot of value, especially in PvE. For Wyvern 13, you can use him as an AoE and also a defense buff, and also like someone that pads the damage from the Rem 13 one-shot. He does have a guaranteed dual attack with the highest attack character on his skill 2, which is insane value when it comes to that specific hunt. But even if you walk yourself through the different hunts, for Golem, he is extremely prominent. For Wyvern, he's not the most popular. However, if you don't have access to Camilla, you could definitely use Adventurer Roz. They're basically the same character, but one takes a little bit more time, but also gives you more damage in the... You know what I mean. And somehow in Asthmatic 13, he's used even more than where he's supposed to be used, which is Golem, because he's a Fire Knight. Long story short, he is a terrific character in hunts. However, he's also just insane for a Nightmare raid. I tried to use him for Devourer Archon, which I think is like the top left boss, where sometimes all you need is a defense break and then Commander Lorena can kind of set everything up. He gives defense buff, he does the AoE, he has a guaranteed dual attack that you can soul burn so that Commander Lorena gets more hits or more turns even though she's really slow. He's great utility. He has, again, immunity and a guaranteed dual attack on S2. The amount of mitigation and utility that he puts out, especially as a free character that everyone is going to have, is insane. And even in PvP, there are times where you do want someone to give immunity, and there are times where you want to have the barrier and mitigation in the backline that he provides with one of his runes. So even in terms of usability in PvP, he's also got a spot. Long story short, I'm sure most of you guys already have Adventurer Roz invested in too, but if you didn't, give him some love, tender love, care. He doesn't really require many molas or catalysts or anything in general. And I mean, he's the main character, guys. Come on, you know what I mean? Cut a guy some slack. He's seen the world die like 7 times. I do want to make a special shout out to a few characters that didn't make the list, but were definitely close. And that is Lorena, Doris, Mascot Hazel, and a couple of Expo specific units that are maybe not the most impactful for general PvE, but are definitely good when you need them for specific expeditions. Characters like Mascot Hazel, Zealot Carmine Rose, Mercenary Helga all have their place in terms of being great PvE characters in certain cases, but ultimately I think aside from maybe Mascot Hazel, who you could argue is probably the top 6th, I guess, character that you want to invest in as a specially changed character, all these characters are a bit too niche, or you only get to bust them out whenever their expedition is available. And that, in my opinion, is a little bit too niche and a bit too specific. So I don't know how worthwhile or how good that really is. That being said though, guys, I hope you enjoyed, learned, liked this video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn the notification bell, subscribe, check out the rest of my platforms and Discord, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, etc. When I go live, I now go live on both YouTube and Twitch, so make sure to check that out as well. Check out the rest of my platforms for any of the other infographics and stuff that I've made. I'll see you guys on the next one. Adios.